My name is Craig Bartell. I'm a solutions consultant with Tableau. We're a subsidiary of Salesforce now. And I am based in South Florida in Tampa. But I've actually been working with the state of North Carolina and Kim and team for probably 6 or more years now with the implementation of Tableau at the state there. So um, glad you could join us. Today is the session where we're going to walk through Tableau Server for the business end user. So this is, if you're not aware, this is part of a series of webinars that we do about every 2 weeks. They kind of work in a process where we start with kind of data acquisition, data mapping, then analytics, gaining insights, then deploying those insights, and then some best practices. So it kind of follows a theme as we move through. And today's is really about the consumption of content, the sharing of content through something called Tableau Server. So if you have interest or haven't attended any of the prior ones, please get a hold of Kim. And as she was mentioning, we're trying to make available the recordings, but we will be repeating these. We kind of do them monthly, or actually we do them every 2 weeks, but they follow, we walk through the same flow every other week. So with that in mind, I'll kind of move through here. Primarily, it will be hands-on. I hate doing, I don't want to subject you to a slideware presentation, but I did want to at least kind of introduce you. If you're not aware of the platform, I have to kind of make the assumption that sometimes folks aren't aware of what our solution does. But here, just by the way, these are our connection information. So Henry Wisniewski is the account exec. He is based in Raleigh, and actually Wake Forest, but close enough to Raleigh. And he's the account executive, and I am the solutions engineer that supports the account. Currently, there's also another one of my colleagues, Kelly Klein, who primarily supports the state. However, she's on maternity leave right now, so she'll be back in October. But we work collectively as a team. So if you need to get a hold of us, this is the way we can do that. I'll leave that up for you. Here's kind of the agenda that we'll be going through today. Again, I won't read through all of these, but basically it's how do we focus a little bit on the different roles that one has. So the product is licensed within the state, and there's different roles that you have within the agency. You'll have a person that's kind of your designated, what we call a site administrator within your site. A site is kind of akin to your agency or your division. And then there are different roles that grant you certain access to the product, and we'll go through all that as we go through the demonstration too. And I'll kind of demonstrate these capabilities that you'll have in role as we go through the demonstration. So I just got a quick review of this. If you look at the typical analytics process, starting in the upper left, we typically start with the connection to data, obviously, right? And that data can be in many different data source types. It can be in what we call local files, meaning Excel, CSV, text. It could be server-based, like, Oracle's Microsoft SQL Server. Azure could be cloud-based, like Snowflake. There's all these different data sources, and there's ones that connect via application like Salesforce or ServiceNow, or, you can imagine all the other hundreds of different applications that exist. So we're in the business of providing connectivity. So the first step is we need to connect to that data. We do that. And then this step called extract, transforming, and loading, it's important to do that. We'll match that to a product name in just a second. We actually use something called Tableau Prep Builder, because we want to make sure before we do our insights that our data is trusted, it's in the right format, it's cleansed, etc. And then we do our visualization and insight generation. And then we move over to collaborating and discovering, which is where we share that content, deploy that content with others, could be internal agency or could be external to the public. And then that loop continues. And the benefit here of this slide is talking about the fact that we shorten this loop because we remove kind of that reliance on IT to do a lot of these steps. In many cases, I see at customers, there's a designated person who is the quote report developer. That's kind of the the model that we're trying to get away from. We're trying to allow everyone to be an analyst within their environment, but obviously it requires connection to data. So what we're seeing is in the process of this loop, feedback loop kind of changing, more and more access is being granted to end users to do their own data exploration. And that's what kind of leads us to, the product that we've developed, which is, overlaying that process. Tableau Prep does the collect, cleansing, and connecting to data. We have another session on that. We did that one a few weeks ago. Tableau Desktop, we did that one a few weeks ago, where we actually generate our insights and, of course, our charts and graphs and dashboards. And then today we'll be looking at one of these two options, which is basically the same product. There's Tableau Cloud and there's Tableau Server. Tableau Server is what the state has implemented. That is managed by the state. So your IT department manages that, whereas Tableau Cloud is something that Tableau/Salesforce manages. So these are the products. It's a very straightforward platform. These are the role types that we will discuss. So when we and there's when you're added to the Tableau server environment, you'll be assigned one of these site roles. You will either be a creator, explorer, or a viewer. Now, a creator would be, as you can imagine, somebody who creates both insights and data sources. And I emphasize data sources because that is really the only difference between a creator and an explorer. Actually, there's another difference that I'll highlight here. The two differences are, one, Creator allows you to download a copy of Desktop and Prep Builder to your desktop, right? And gives you a creator license on Tableau server or cloud. So you would need, if you wanted to install Tableau Desktop, you would need, and or Prep, you would need a creator license to do that. That also gives you the ability to publish data sources into Tableau server and share them with others. That's the whole intent of this, right? As we move to a collaborative environment, we want to be able to share our curated data sources with others, of course, permission them and secure them and all that, which we can do and we'll talk about. Now, an Explorer license is a web-based license, so it only works in Tableau Server or Tableau Cloud. And really the only difference is that you cannot create and upload a data source. You can only create insights off of existing data sources. So you do not, obviously, because you're not using a desktop version, you don't have Tableau Desktop or Prep, but there is a web edit version that allows you to do that. You just cannot say, for example, upload an Excel file to use it for analysis. Okay, that's important to understand. A viewer is simply somebody who consumes content. So they don't do any editing, they don't do any new creation of content. However, they can interact with the content, a dashboard of visualization. They can have alerts set up for them. They can subscribe to content. They can download summary data. They can do all these things. It's just they don't have edit capabilities, edit or create capabilities. So with that, and by the way, I'm going to also be monitoring the chat window over here. If you do have questions, put them in the chat. I will try to answer them in kind. If we don't have time, we'll leave time at the very end. It shouldn't take the whole hour to go through this material. So just wanted you to mention that to you. Just a couple more slides here. So again, Prep Builder, we're not going to be covering this today, but it's a great tool for you to understand and manage the data preparation process. And again, I can't really describe it more than saying it is that. It is really designed for the end user who wants to create and manage that data cleansing process. Tableau Desktop, of course, is our flagship component, been around for 20 plus years, and is really the standard for data discovery, right? The ability to quickly gain access to your data and generate insights as a casual end user. And I'll kind of point this out because I'm not bashful. I know Power BI exists at the state, but you have to understand that Tableau is really designed for the end user. It was not designed for a report developer, which Power BI really is. I mean, it's really designed more for somebody that's technical, that understands DAX and things like that. Whether you agree with me or not, I just kind of make that statement. And if you have any concerns about that, happy to address that also, offline. So Tableau server, of course, we're going to be spending the bulk of the time talking about that from the consumption standpoint. And that's where we're going to jump in. So um, give me one second. I just want to make sure that we're all set up here. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into Tableau desktop. So the first thing we need to discuss is how does content get into Tableau, Tableau server specifically. So now I'm on my desktop and I've developed some insights which I've put into a dashboard. This is something that I developed. This is obviously not North Carolina specific, but just work with me on that. It's a nice dashboard that shows hurricane impact analysis for homelessness. If we were worried about, where the 90% chance of winds are going to affect us, and, in a specific county, we could drill down. So this is a very typical use case, one very relevant to me in Florida, obviously, as we expect a busy hurricane season this year as well. So with that, yeah, give me one second. I also want to make sure I can see the window of questions here. Very good. Okay, don't want to deal with that. Okay, so what do we do with this dashboard? Let's say that we like it. It's ready for consumption. We've tested it. We're now going to come up to this line up here, and we're going to say, well, first we're going to sign into our server environment. I'm actually logged into Tableau Cloud. Don't worry about that because I don't obviously have access to your server environment. But it looks identical to Tableau server, minus the fact that you'll have your own custom folders created and so on. So here's the first place where I'll call your attention to the two things that I'm going to publish. I'm going to publish the workbook and potentially the data source. Remember, the whole point of going through the exercise of creating a curated data source, whether it be through Tableau Desktop or Tableau Prep, is so that now others can use it in addition to yourself. Let's say you've spent a bunch of time creating a really nice case management data set so that allows people to go in and see, what areas of the business are people submitting cases on, how long is it taking to resolve cases, which of our case agents are the most efficient, all that kind of stuff, right? Well, it would be nice if we could share that information and allow end users to very quickly and easily go in when somebody comes in and says, hey, which case types are taking us the longest to resolve, right? So again, I'm just spitballing kind of different example use cases here. So in our case, we're going to publish this workbook. So when I do that, you're going to see a dialog box pop up, which is asking me for some information. It's saying, where do you want to publish this? So this is now, let me take a step back too. I am a creator user because I have Tableau Desktop on my desktop. In a minute, I will log out and I will log back as an explorer so you can see the differences. But obviously the first one is that I'm on Tableau Desktop, and now I'm going to want to publish this to a location. These are folders, project folders. I've got, obviously this is a demo environment. I'm going to put it in this government example content area. I'm going to give it a name. I might want to call it something like, for North Carolina DIT or whatever. I want to give it a name, but I have to give it a unique name. I might give it some tags so it's easier to search for. Now, if you're familiar with creating a workbook, you'd have multiple sheets, just kind of like you do in Excel where you have tabs. You see at the bottom of my dashboard, I've got all these different tabs. Again, we'll get into that in Tableau Desktop's session. But for the most part, we've got all these different sheets and we can decide which of the sheets we want to deploy. I might typically only want to deploy a dashboard. So I'm going to just deploy this one dashboard that I have in my set of insights. So you see I've got one sheet out of 13. And then from a permission standpoint, this is very important where we start defining what are the permissions that I'm going to assign to either groups of users or individual users. So let's say for example, for all East region people, which are, if I wanted to understand who that were, there's no users in there, but office product managers, there's 2 users in that. Well, for that particular use group, I'm going to allow these capabilities, and I'm going to deny certain capabilities, or I'm going to, allow them to do certain things, right? So these are all permissions that get set up. So understand fully that Tableau server is a permissioned environment. It is fully secure. We can do row and column level security, and that's a whole topic unto itself. But the bottom line is it's permissioned. You're going to want to set up a permissioned kind of folder structure within your agency or your site, as we would call it. So that's that. I'm going to cancel out of that. And then finally, the data sources in this case are going to be embedded in my workbook. Now, there's two different ways that I can publish a workbook. I can either publish it where the data is embedded in the workbook, or it's published separately. And I put a little, hint up here at the top, which says, it kind of does the same thing that I was describing before. In this one publish, I'll be able to publish both the workbook and a separate data source, which allows it to then be kind of disconnected, well, not disconnected, but two separate entities, which I'll be able to leverage both in this dashboard and for other things. So, okay. And then finally, we'll click the publish button. Now, I'm not actually going to do that because I've published this so many times. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to flip over to Tableau server. Now, once I log into Tableau server, I'm probably going to see something that looks like this. Oh, well, yeah, I may have to log in. Actually, in your environment, you're not going to have to log in because you'd have single sign-on. So I'm doing my multi-factor authentication here. Can't see it on the back end, but there we go. And when I log in, I'll probably see a home page. Little warning message there. And then they're my home page, right? So this home page is where and I'll walk through all of these different options right here. But when I've published my dashboard, what you'd see is something that looks like this. It'll bring up a screen like this and it'll say, hey, confirmed, we did publish your workbook. It's sitting in this folder and so on, right? And I'll get to how I would actually interface with this or interact with it in just a second. So again, publishing a data source is very similar. You just would go through this workflow here. You'd go server, this is back in desktop, publish data source, pick a folder, just the same way that you did a workbook, okay? Just wanted to mention that. So obviously only creators can publish from desktop either data sources or workbooks, okay? So now let's see here. I'm actually going to, let me see, is there anything we want to do while a creator? No, let's go ahead. I'm the administrator, so I'm actually going to sign out and log back in as just a creator user, not as an administrator. So give me a second to do that. Workshop, not user. Okay, that's my user. I have to give them my password. I sign in. Should look very similar, only in this case, what you're going to notice, and just let me do my authentication. Just a little security warning there as I log in. My upgrade warning. Okay, there we go. So this is what Chris Creator, this is kind of the name of this guy who's my creator user, is called Chris Creator. So he's got this nice little banner at the top of the screen. He's got some options that allow him to do, you notice he doesn't have the right to create projects, but he can create workbooks, flows, and publish data sources. So there's some things that we need to talk about what type of things do we store within Tableau server. So to do that, I'm going to go over to this first menu, which talks about the different types of objects. So we have, this is an exploration view where I can find which projects. So in this case, Chris Creator only has access to 3 folders: the data sources folder, government example, and user 100 project. There are 83 workbooks that are available to him to see. There are 184 views. A view is something that is part of a workbook, so you have multiple views within a workbook. Metrics, you can forget about those because they've been decommissioned when we move to our Tableau Pulse, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We have 60 data sources and then 7 Tableau prep flows or prep builder flows, which have been published, and then no virtual connections. A virtual connection is a way to abstract data and security parameters for data sources and data tables. I'm not really going to cover that today. That's more of an advanced topic. So you'll notice navigationally, if I want to jump into this folder, I just click on it and it takes me into government example content. And I see a whole long laundry list of content that I've published out here, including that one that probably looks familiar, but all these different things that if one wanted to log in and do a search for, and you can, for example, come in here and say, let's look for homelessness, and you see that it pops up all of these different. So searching is a very important component of the platform. If I press enter, I can now filter by all types of content. If I want to see all workbooks that have the word home in them, or all data sources that have the word home in them, who owns it. So there's a content ownership principle that we'll talk about. So whomever publishes the content is considered the owner of the content. So that's important when it talks about what people can do with content. As the publisher or owner of the content, you have the first right of refusal to set the permissions for your content. Of course, that will be enforced at the level of the role that you have, whether it's a creator, explorer, or a viewer. So for example, if you're only a viewer user and somebody has given you edit rights to the dashboard, you obviously will not see the edit function in your web browser, options. So that's that. So kind of, I'm going to go back to our kind of left list here, and you can see the different options. So home, we talked about, that's kind of my home view, which has my recently accessed content, my shared with me content, my recommended content. So this is kind of an algorithm that shows, you see it says trending, meaning a lot of people have accessed it recently. It's kind of a algorithm that goes through, and you can see here, why is this recommended? And if I click on that, it's saying this is trending. So it's basically just explaining to you why it was recommended. These are accelerators. These are predefined dashboards that we publish for certain types of users where you can connect to standard data sources already like Salesforce or ServiceNow and get predefined dashboards. Favorites are just that. So this person does not have any favorites, but I could maybe come in here, and for this person, I could say, let's go ahead and make the this dashboard, this Department of Emergency Management dashboard, a favorite. So I star it. Maybe I want to make this one a star too. And then when I come back to my favorites, I will now see that these are my favorited ones. And I could set it up so that when I log in, I always see my favorited ones the most often. Now, this would be the most recently accessed visualizations or dashboards. And by the way, I want you to get out of the habit of thinking that everything has to be a dashboard, because every one of those charts could be its own visualization. If you wanted to share something with one of your colleagues to say, hey, I just want to show this person one bar chart that shows why caseloads are increasing over time, I would just share that. And you can do that. In this case, most of these appear to be all Actually, this one down here is just the map of Florida. You can see, I don't know what it's broken down by, but that in itself is one visualization. Okay, continuing down, recommendations. These would be the ones that are recommended for me based on, like we said, trending. Personal space is kind of your own space where you can create and put your own content. Nobody else can manage that space, only you. Explore is kind of the overall function you use to explore and search through all the content folders you have access to. Now, Tableau Pulse is a brand new AI-based capability that we announced a couple months ago. Unfortunately, it's currently only available in Tableau Cloud, so you will not see this in your environment, but it's some of our first foray into AI where we're publishing KPIs similar to what you thought of as metrics before, where they're able to subscribe to certain metrics, and those metrics will allow you to track certain things and generate certain insights from an AI generative perspective and do some pattern matching and forecasting and those sorts of things. So I'm not going to spend much time on that. Okay, We've talked about the different organization of content. Let's delve into and find that homelessness dashboard. So remember, I'm still a creator user at this point. So what else can a creator user do? So if I were to look at this, let's talk about permissioning for a second. So actually, let me go up a level. So the government example content folder has certain permissions. If I wanted to see what those permissions are, well, actually, I should have done it as an administrator. But let's go down into our homelessness dashboard. I forgot about that fact. Only the administrator is going to be able to set the permissions. So we should be able to see, yeah, we can see what permissions are set up for this dashboard, meaning you see that for all users, there's certain rights. And if I hover over this, it means that they can view it, they can filter it, um, they can add comments, they can download images, etc. There's all these different capabilities, right? So this would be permissions that are set up for any particular type of user or specific user. So as I scroll through, you see that pretty much all the users here have the ability to administer content within that environment to certain degrees, right? And it will depend on the user type. Let's see here. You see that the Vic viewer, now I want to point out, he's a viewer. So you notice he doesn't have the ability to share, download full data, do web editing or deleting of content or setting permissions. That is not his capability. So that's where permissions come in. Let's go ahead now and um, bring open this dashboard. So now I'm kind of consuming at this point, right? So as a consumer of content, I'm still a creator. I can interact with it just like I did before. If I wanted to see what's going on in this county and with this age group, I can narrow down just like I was, right? So the type of things I might do from an analysis standpoint, I might say, let's go ahead and set up comments. I want to say, oh, Dora Explorer, please take a look at this, and they're going to get an email with this view link in it. And then Craig Bartel logs in and says, yes, this is a problem. So you see there's a running dialogue of what's going on here. We're actually taking this also to interact with Microsoft Teams so that you'll be able to integrate content into Teams so that you'll essentially see the same thing. You'll see it in, I forget what it's called in Teams because we don't use Teams here, but you'll be able to, I think a channel or something like that. You'll be actually be able to embed and collaborate on content and link to content from within Microsoft Teams. So that's called comments. You can set up subscriptions. So subscription would be, hey, I want to allow for this view. Now I'm not the original creator of this content, right? So I only have the ability to subscribe to it. I cannot subscribe others to it. As the owner of the content and the site admin is the only person who has the ability to subscribe other people to it. But in that regard, I could have pointed, like I did, I viewed this, sent an email, a comment to that person. They then see it and want to subscribe to it. And then they can decide how often they want to get it, on what schedule, whether, a specific schedule that we set up in the system. And then they would get that refreshed at that point of time. They can also set up alerts. So alert means that I'm not sure that I'll have the ability. Let's see here. Yeah, like let's say that number of count of disaster prone residents here. I want to create a metric to alert me when the count gets above a certain threshold, and then that will be emailed to me as well. And I can set up the list of recipients who can get that alert. So that's another thing that I have the capability of doing. Let me reset this view right here. We have the ability to set up custom views. That means the way the dashboard was clicked through to that point, I could set up as a specific view. So you can have multiple, you could maybe have my view, I could have my colleague's view, I could have regional views, demographic views, all different sorts of types of deployment of this content. Now, a big one here is this option called edit. Now, as both creator and explorer, I have the ability to click this button and it will open up that dashboard in a mode that looks exactly like desktop. So for example, if I wanted to come in and create a new visualization that was like, oh, I want to see the total count of homeless broken down by, say veteran status, and I, want to see it broken out like this, entire view, toggle on the, so now I see that we don't really want to see our null values, so we'll exclude that. So this is now, as an explorer, as a creator user, I've decided, oh, you know what, I've created a new visual. Maybe I want to incorporate it into my dashboard. So maybe I also want to colorize it by the age group. So let's colorize it by age group here, that we see that we've got, the different uh, groupings by age group. Um, or maybe we want to not colorize by age group, but put it into the different age group columns. Again, these are just different ways that one might be able to, segment our data, or maybe we want to show it broken out like this. So again, just maybe, yeah, maybe veteran status, this time by color. So you see how I've been playing around with my visualization to the point where I kind of like it like this. And now I might come back and say, you know what, I'm going to make a version of this dashboard that and add it to, this dashboard here, and put it, you can see there's already one like it, but maybe I'll come in and I'll add it, down here at the bottom. And there you go. So this is not really what I'd want to do, but bottom line is that's the capability that I have. You have the capability of editing, and I'm just gonna remove this because I really don't want I don't want to mess with the existing dashboard that I have. So now let's go ahead, and I want to close this because that was an example of web editing. Let's say that as a creator, actually no, I'm going to save that for when I'm no, we're gonna do it actually. I want to show you a main difference between a creator and explorer user. So let's go back to our main exploration window. And if you see, I want to create a new workbook. Well, I need to connect to data to do it. So as a creator user, I have these options. I can either connect to data sources that exist on this site. So you see, these are all the Tableau data sources that exist. So for example, if I wanted to look for that homelessness data source, here it is, and I could connect to it. It's already been published. But if it hasn't already been published, I cannot create a new data source. Or as a creator user, I have the ability to upload a data file. For example, I could go find an Excel file and upload it up here. Or I could use one of the connectors like to Microsoft SQL Server or Google Analytics or Azure or whatever it is, and then connect to the data source. So like here, Microsoft SQL Server, I'd have to provide my logon information, but I could do that at least. I want you to remember this screen because this screen will look different. I will only see this option that says only on this site because as an Explorer user, you don't have the ability to create new data connections. Okay, so again, I'm not going to walk through an example, a new workbook, but I think you get the idea. Okay, so now I think what I'll do is I will log out and I will log back in as a Explorer user. Let's see here. Yep. I got to make sure I got the right one. And this should be our Dora, the Explorer user. Just to play on words, obviously. Yep, we see that we're now logged in as Dora. So Dora has the ability to see a certain set of folders. Hers is now user 101 project. So you see that she's got a little different view of things. But again, for the most part, pretty much everything that was the same except for the ability to publish up data sources. So for example, if I want to find that homeless dashboard, we'll bring it up. You'll notice they have the same interactive capabilities. They could even do web edit. You see here, click the edit button, interactions all the same. But the one thing they cannot do is, and I'll go back to this main screen here, let's say new workbook. Now you see the data panel only connects to existing data sources. I no longer see that connectors or files option, right? So they can still come in here and they could say, let's look for that homeless storm impact data set. Yeah, let's start bringing in our where to have it here, county data, and I want to see the number of homeless by county data. There we go. Toggle it on. So, again, that this is as an explorer. So think about it. I want to explore my data, right? That is what an explorer does. They explore their data. Now, why did I pick that data set? Well, it was nice that, whomever created that homelessness data set that I can now use as a data set, a curated data set to do my analysis. And oh, by the way, decide that I want to publish it and put it in a folder, maybe I put it in the staging folder. That's a whole nother concept here. I give it a name and I want to publish it out for others to review and make it available to my team or management or executives or so on, right? So that's the whole idea of connecting with content, and is the ability. You might be asking, oh, can I overwrite a dashboard? Well, technically, yeah, but if you set up your permissions right, you will only let somebody that edits content save it to their folder and not overwrite it back to somebody else's folder, which is why it's important to kind of have a whole process for how we create content and share content and, publish content and all of that. That's, again, something you'd want to talk with your site administrator about that. Or if you have questions, I'm happy to set up a separate session with you individually or your team, or go through Kim as well to set this stuff up. One capability, by the way, I wanted to point out, which is very useful, is called Data Guide. So this is another one of those AI infused functions that we've added into the product. So let's say, for example, I'm looking at this particular county, which is Taylor County, and I wanted to see, is there something that stands out in Taylor County that I might want to take a look at? Now, what this is going to do is it's going to do some statistical analysis behind the scenes, and it's going to ask questions about the data, and it's going to say, oh, you know what? Employment status stands out as being a potential contributor to the value that we have. It also has both dimensions and measures which could be contributing. So if I look at that, you see how it's generating these insights here. So for example, if I wanted to look at the population overall or employment status, I could now click that button and then go into a full analysis of that particular aspect of this. I point this out because a lot of times things don't jump out at us, right? So in this case, I might be saying, why is it that we have, so many people that are employed that are homeless in that area? Is there something that we're not catching as far as maybe some benefit or social service criteria, or maybe we will enforce the fact that we are making sure that people are looking for employment capabilities? I don't know. I'm just speculating. But the point being here is this tool is to allow you to be a guide to move forward. This used to be called explain data. In fact, in your environment, I think you're probably at the latest environment now, but it used to be called explain data. So that is what Data Guide does. And again, if you have any questions or about anything, please put them into the chat window. Happy to address them. All right, so the last thing we're going to cover is the viewer role. So I'm now going to log out of being Dora, and I'm going to log in as Vic viewer. So get the email right. That looks good. We're going to sign in, put our password in, which is And pretty much again, things look very similar. However, I'm going to continue with that example that we were looking at before. Now, as a viewer, what does the user have the ability to do? Well, they can interact, they can have filters, they can drill down, they can do all the great things that one might want to do as an interactor with data. But you see there's no edit button up here. So what can they do? They can view data details. They can see things like, how has this dashboard been used? What are the data sources? What are the fields in use? These are all, by the way, things that an explorer or a creator can also see. They can create views. So if I created my own view here, I could save that as a view. You'll see also here that they can still subscribe themselves, just like an explorer can subscribe themselves to this content to be refreshed, but they can only be notified of alerts, right? And what essentially this will show is what alerts they've been notified for. They cannot set alerts themselves. Okay, only others, explorers and viewers, can set up those alerts. They can still add comments just like other folks can, and they can comment as well. Certain download options are available. I didn't really cover that in other ones. Those are pretty much the same for all different types of viewers. And those, by the way, you can control by individual permissions. So if you don't want your data to be downloaded, which is very important, if you have secure data, you could go ahead and deny access to downloading capabilities. The one I didn't point out for the other ones was this share option. So this will share both a URL link, which you see down here, to your content, or it will copy the embed code. What is embed code? That is essentially the JavaScript code that you need to embed into, say, a portal window, whether you're being like Drupal or some other portal-based environment, like in an iframe, where you want to publish your content. You'll also notice, let me go ahead and get back to the main panel here, that you see how these are all grayed out. So a user that's a viewer will not have the ability to create projects, workbooks, flows, or connections. Kind of makes sense. They can only consume content, right? The last thing I'll point out is that on the subject of embedding content. So if I wanted to take a piece of content and embed, what do we mean by embedding? Well, let me try to point that out here. I'll see if I can find some. Let me get a new page here. So for example, I know you guys do some embedding, but no, this is I just one I picked here. So communicable diseases. Let's see here. All right, I picked a bad one. um, there should be dashboards on this one. Okay, anyway, let me find a different one. Well, let's just go to now this is a little, this is the COVID dashboards but this will give you an idea of, what it means to show a dashboard embedded into a website. Right? So we click a link and it's embedded into a website that has some summary data, but this is actually the data down below here. That's the Tableau data that is embedded into a website, right? We call that embedding, right? For obvious reasons. So that is what an embedded website looks like, where we take a view or a dashboard and embed it into the website. All right, well, that kind of covers soup to nuts what we were going to talk about around how we use Tableau Server. Kind of the way that we have things arranged is that if you do have questions about your environment, go ahead and contact Kim. I put my email up there. You're welcome to contact me, but we kind of want to make sure that Kim's in the loop, just to make sure that Maybe there's questions that Kim can head off that are environment specific to your server. So I did mention that DIT has already stood up this server, so it exists in your environment, and I encourage you to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we have a last minute question. Could you demo how to refresh separate data source on server if you have multiple data sources for one dashboard? Yeah, now for that, I'm not sure if I can demo, but each data source, and remember, a data source in and of itself could be connecting to multiple back end actual data sources themselves. But so I'm not sure whether you're talking about multiple Tableau data sources or one data source that connects back to multiple sources, or maybe you're like, it really doesn't matter. So if you have a dashboard that has multiple sources in it, the bottom line is that you would have an extract refresh schedule at the data source level. So that then it's up to you to decide, how often that the dashboard itself is going to refresh against that data, right? If you've said, hey, I want to refresh my dashboard when the data refreshes, well, then that's fine. But it's kind of up to you to make sure that though, like if you have multiple data sources in one dashboard, like they should be reset. The extracts should be refreshed on a synchronized basis. Otherwise, you could potentially be out of sync. I guess if I'm thinking through this correctly. So let me know if that answers your question. If not, we could, kind of circle back on it, or if we need to have a sidebar discussion, that's fine too. We have a schedule, but only for all the data sources. Yeah, that's fine. So you can also, by the way, set up, and I'm not sure how you've set up your schedule, but you know, the extract schedule is going to work off of a defined schedule within Tableau server. So there's existing already kind of job schedules. So you would assign a data refresh to happen on that job schedule. So that data source will run on that schedule. So I guess just make sure that all of the individual data sources refresh on that particular schedule. So I'm not sure. Maybe there's more to this question that I need to have info on, but I guess it sounds to me like there's an issue or something that we're not getting things refreshed or something like that. So probably need to delve into that. I know a lot of times what might happen is, let's say that your data in your SQL Server table, for example, is updated at 5 a.m. every day. So you need to make sure that the extract refresh happens against that table at 5:30 in the morning or whenever that job update finishes, right? So there's kind of other permutations of making sure that the data is updated at certain times. Otherwise, you're not getting the right updates or whatnot. Let us know if you have any questions. Okay. Have a great day.